Some people go through their lives with the persistent feeling that they are watching themselves from somewhere slightly behind and to the left. It isn't disassociation exactly. They are present. They respond at the right times. They say the right things. They are by most measures excellent at being a person. But there is a layer of glass between them and everything that happens. A thickness. The birthday feels performed. The argument feels scripted. Even the moments that are supposed to crack something open. Falling in love. Standing at a grave, holding a child for the first time. Arrive with a muted quality, like hearing music through a wall. They have mentioned it once or twice to people they trusted. The response was always some version of, "But you seem so together." Which is the problem, they think, but never say. Being together is the thing they're best at. It's the thing that took up all the space. There wasn't room for anything else. In the 1940s, a pediatrician named Donald Winnicott had a consulting room on the second floor of a hospital on the Harrow Road in West London. He had been seeing children and mothers there for 20 years. By his own estimate, he had conducted over 60,000 consultations. During the Second World War, Winnicott was asked to work with evacuated children. Children who had been removed from London and sent to the countryside without their parents to protect them from the bombing. What he found there troubled him. The children weren't only grieving the separation, some of them were grieving something harder to name. Something about the loss of a particular relationship that had been, for them, the ground they stood on. He went back to the consulting room. He went back to the ordinary appointments, the checkups, the developmental reviews, the well baby visits, and he began to watch more carefully. What he was watching was a moment. It lasted a few seconds, usually. It happened in every room with every pair. The infant would do something spontaneous, reach toward an object, make a sound, turn towards the light. A gesture arising from nowhere, from inside, unbidden. And then the mother responded. In the good cases, she met it. She followed the infant's gaze, echoed the sound, matched the reaching with her attention. The infant learned. My interior leads somewhere. My impulse has weight. I am someone who can initiate. In the other cases, and these were not bad mothers, not absent mothers, not abusive mothers, these were often very loving, very attentive mothers. Something slightly different happened. The mother responded, but not to what the infant had just done. She responded to what she needed to happen next. Her anxiety, her agenda, her own unmet need arrived in the space a half second before the infant's gesture could land. The infant reached. The mother was already somewhere else. Winnicott watched this happen in thousands of rooms over 40 years. In 1960 he wrote a paper. He called it Ego Distortion in Terms of True and False Self. It was 11 pages long. It described what happened to the child who learned very early that reaching didn't lead anywhere. What the infant did was adapt. This is what human infants do better than almost any other creature on earth. They track, they read, they calibrate. The infant began to track the mother instead of following its own impulse. It learned the shape of her attention, where it was, when it was available, what it responded to. It learned how to be the child she needed at any given moment, not through calculation, through something closer to instinct. The original gesture was simply replaced, slowly and completely, by a different orientation, outward, toward her, always. By the time the child started school, teachers noticed things, emotionally intelligent, perceptive, mature beyond their years. The child who knew when something was wrong with an adult before the adult knew themselves. The child who managed the mood of the classroom, who comforted others, who never seemed to need anything. Parents heard this and felt proud. Nobody asked what it cost. The child grew. The surface became more elaborate, more competent, more socially sophisticated. It graduated. It performed well under pressure in every space it entered. It found the frequency within seconds and matched it. It learned to appear warm, to produce the right response, to be the version of itself that the situation required. People described it as a gift, intuition, emotional intelligence. The person everyone called first, and in the quiet moments, in the car, in the shower, standing in the kitchen at 11 p.m. after everyone else has gone to bed, there was something underneath all of it. Not sadness, exactly. Not anxiety. A flatness, a quality of watching. The performance had been so complete for so long that the performer had become hard to find. The obvious explanation, when someone finally names it to a therapist or doctor or a person they love, is that this is a depression or anxiety or the result of childhood trauma. And those explanations aren't wrong. They describe real things happening to a real nervous system. There are good tools for that. The flatness can sometimes be treated, the disconnection reduced, the difficulty feeling addressed. But treating the symptom doesn't explain the structure, and the structure was what Winnicott was pointing at. The problem isn't that something went wrong. The problem is something never started. Winnicott made a distinction that sounds simple and isn't. The true self, he argued, is not the emotional self, or the authentic self, or the self that feels strongly. It is something more foundational than that. It is the capacity for spontaneous experience itself. The original reaching gesture, whatever the infant was moving towards before it learned to move towards the mother instead. The first impulse before the first adaptation. The false self is what built up around that. Not a mask, a person. A fully functional, socially intelligent, often highly achieving person, built from the outside in, from other people's needs, responded to so consistently and over so many years that they became the architecture. Here is what makes this different from ordinary social adaptation. Every human being adapts. Every human being learns to modulate, to code switch, to be different versions of themselves in different contexts. That is normal. That is healthy. What Winnicott was describing is what happens when the adaptation occurs before there is a self to do the adapting. When the infant turns outward before he has had the chance to establish an interior. When the mother's need arrives in the space the child's own self was trying to occupy. Other mammals don't navigate this in quite the same way. A rhesus infant who doesn't have its impulse met will protest loudly and insistently for a long time. It will not quietly reorganize its entire orientation around the mother's needs. The human infant's capacity for social calibration is extraordinary. More sophisticated, more plastic, more complete than any other species. And it is precisely that capacity that makes this particular damage possible. We are so good at reading what others need that we can do it before we have become anyone, before there is a self to sacrifice. The full self did not fail. It succeeded exactly the task it was built for. Keeping the relationship intact, managing the environment, surviving. It got the grades, formed the friendships, built the life. It is competent and caring and very, very tired. The true self, meanwhile, went quiet because it learned early that reaching didn't lead anywhere, and very quiet things are hard to find again. Winnicott believed the true self was never destroyed, only hidden. Protected in a way, the full self does perform a protective function. It places something between the core of the person and the world that wasn't ready to meet it. The problem is when the protection becomes permanent, when the glass stops being a shield and becomes a wall, when the person can no longer remember what was behind it. There's no clean path back. That would be dishonest to say. Years of building a person you didn't consciously choose to build don't dissolve because you understand why they were built. The competence is real. The achievements are real. The care you feel for other people is real. The false self, for all that it cost, also gave things. But naming it does something. Not everything. Not the hollow birthday. Not the quiet hallway after the doors closes. But something. The feeling of watching yourself from behind the glass has a structure now. It is not a personality flaw. It is not depression that didn't respond to treatment. It is not emotional unavailability or fear of intimacy or any of the other labels that describe the outside of the problem without touching the inside. It is the gap between who adapted and who was trying to emerge. And the uncomfortable implication, the one Winnicott kept circling for 40 years in 60,000 consulting rooms, in 11 dense pages written in 1960, is that the true self is not gone. It is very quiet. It learned to be quiet for good reasons, in a specific space, at a specific moment, a very long time ago. It is still listening, though, for a reaching gesture that might, this time, lead somewhere.